Hello everybody and welcome to the True Love Talk channel. As you know, here we want to learn about human sexuality, love, life, family, and all of this from the point of view of the Catholic Church, particularly what Pope John Paul II left in the Theology of the Body. As you also know, I am Elisa, and today we're going to talk about femininity and masculinity. What is it? What is it about and how does it work, right? Okay, so then let's begin. So let's remember that in the last 2 or 3 videos, we've been talking about how human beings in modernity or in this modern age have stopped being people, or a person, to become individuals. And that means that we have been having a crisis, right? And that mainly means that we hate who we are, right? We hate that we are finite, that we are imperfect, that we are interdependent, the fact that we are not divine, right? That we are not like God. This is what creates these issues between us, right? And we reject humanity, and the moment we reject humanity, we reject not only ourselves, and we become convinced that we cannot be loved because we think we're shameful. So of course nobody's going to love me. But not only do we think that we are incapable of being loved, right? But we also stop loving others because others are going to be just as interdependent and finite and imperfect as we are. So of course, if we don't like it on ourselves, we're not going to like it in the other person. And the thing about recognizing oneself as finite and incomplete, right? The idea of knowing that I don't have in myself everything that humanity is because there are other ways of being human that other people have. That is going to be the center of sexuality, right? The two sexes are the two divisions of humanity, the two basic ways of being human. Sure, then we're going to be even more specified, right? To the point that we are all different kind of women. All women, although they're women, they're different women. But when modernity started saying that human beings should be complete, that we should be perfect, that we should not depend on anyone else, we were rejecting the essence of what is feminine and masculine, to the point that nowadays, if you ask yourself, what do you think masculinity is, or what do you think femininity is, it all boils down to femininity is when women wear makeup and high heels, and that's it, right? And masculinity is that men don't. That's it. It's absolutely superficial, and there's nothing else, because recognizing that masculinity has certain human characteristics that femininity doesn't have, and that femininity has certain human characteristics that masculinity doesn't have, means admitting that we are not complete, that we are not perfect, right? That every human being, although we are completely who we are always incomplete. And of course, that rejection means that the difference between the sexes has evolved as part of the reaction towards sexism. Because in sexism, women were told that they didn't have the same dignity or the same values as men because their femininity makes them different, right? So, of course, the idea of how to correct, right, this injustice is by saying that men and women are absolutely identical, that there's no difference between one and the other, and that, oh yeah, no, there's kind of a difference, but the difference is, that how much makeup you want to wear. That's basically it. And the problem is that this idea of being absolutely independent, of not needing anyone else, means giving up the possibility of being gifts. The human person is a gift for the other person because we are made in the image of God. And remember that God is love, right? And love means taking care of the other person, right? That is part of it. And that is going to be the essential difference between being a person and being an individual. A person is a being in relationship with another. And being a person means understanding who you are and understanding your value and your meaning when you're in that relationship with the other person. It doesn't mean that if no one loves me, then I cannot love myself. What it means is we actually discover who we are. We understand what we can do and how we can do it the moment that somebody else asks us for our help, right? So it's when somebody has a math problem and I solve it that I realize that I am good at math, right? It's in that relationship that we can recognize ourselves and actually develop ourselves. So what we are is no longer a possibility, it's actually a reality because we made it true for the other person to help that other person. So the idea of the relationship with the other person and the taking care, being gift for the other is what is going to allow us to develop humanity. And we develop humanity in ourselves, but we also develop humanity in the other person, which means that this being human is all about being able to help the other person be. Let's remember that sexuality, as we said, it goes through the three elements of the human person. The human person has three elements: the body, the soul, the spirit, right? And sexuality goes through the three of them and unifies them in this one goal, which is love, right? Which means that sexuality is there to help us be people. It's what's going to let us be with the other person and to actually serve and be gifts for others. And that is why the fulfillment of sexuality is in parenthood. That meaning that femininity has its fulfillment in motherhood and masculinity has its fulfillment in fatherhood. And think about it. The way in which we take care of others is what's going to shape our bodies, our souls, and our spirits. Our bodies, because the possibility or impossibility of carrying children is what's going to make the difference between a feminine body and a masculine body. And not just in terms of reproductive system. We're also talking about, because women need to get pregnant, they also have a different kind of endocrine system. Because to carry a child, the hips need to be wider, right? And they need to grow. We're going to have a different kind of skeleton. The skin needs to expand, so we are going to have a different kind of dermic system, right, of skin. Our muscles are going to be different because it depends whether or not we need to be able to carry a child or not. Okay? That is what makes the difference between the feminine and the masculine body. But that also translates in the difference of the spirit. And let's remember that the spirit is the immaterial essence of a person and that it is characterized by intelligence. And that intelligence is going to let us develop an identity and develop a consciousness of who we are and how we do it. So the actual situation of carrying the child or not carrying it is going to make the difference between the kind of intelligence, the kind of consciousness, the kind of identity you're going to create. And to explain this, we need to go back to the idea of the multiple intelligences that Daniel Goleman had talked about. So let's remember that Daniel Goleman stated that there are different kinds of intelligence. So we have the logical mathematical intelligence, which is what we think more often as intelligence in itself, right? We have logical mathematical, but we also have spatial intelligence, which is being able to manage space well, right? We also have linguistic intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, which is the capacity to establish relationship with others, intrapersonal intelligence, which is understanding our own feelings and our own emotional states, right? Our spirit, our psyche. All of that is explained, it's understood with this kind of intelligence. We also have musical intelligence, kinetic intelligence, so this meaning the intelligence of knowing how to move and so on. And the thing is that the sexes have different intelligences, because after childbirth, women are going to need to rest for a few days, right? Until the body goes back to normal and their uterus at least reduces its size to where it was or how it was in the beginning, right? And that means that the woman is going to be holding the baby a lot more. Also, women start lactating, right? And they're going to feed the baby. And as they feed them, they start talking to the baby, which means that they need as a higher linguistic intelligence to be able to do that, right? To talk to the baby and teach babies how to speak themselves. And as women are talking to the baby, they're also developing their own identity. Not the identity of the mother, but the identity of the baby, right? The baby is learning who he is, what he's feeling, right? How to be with the other person in that relationship with the mother. So, of course, women need a higher interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligence. Men, on the other hand, are not going to be bedridden after childbirth. So, the way that they are going to take care of the baby is by taking care of the mother as well. And this means providing a good environment, providing a good house, enough food, right? Safety, all of this, which means that they are going to need a higher spatial intelligence, also spatial, logical, mathematical intelligence, and so on. This doesn't mean that women don't have spatial intelligence or that men don't have linguistic intelligence. Both men and women can speak and they can navigate any kind of space. But the thing is, men have a bigger affinity toward the spatial situations, while women have a bigger affinity toward linguistic situations because we're better at it, right? Because femininity is going to allow us to be better at linguistics, and masculinity is going to allow men to be better at spatial relationships or at navigation of any kind. So even though both sexes can do the same, they do it from in different ways, right? The way a woman solves a math problem is completely different from the way a man solves a math problem, although both of them reach the same answer, right? We do it through different processes. And all of this, as I'm telling you, is based on how to care for the other person. And that is also going to change the way in which we view relationships. So Carol Gilligan was a psychologist who decided to study how did children play and what did that mean for the way children relate to each other. She started her studies looking at the play of children in the ages between 3 years and more or less 8 or 12 years. And these are the ages in which girls don't play with boys because boys are bad and they're mean, and boys don't play with girls because girls are boring and they're also mean, and they don't like each other, and they naturally separate, not because there's an adult telling them to play separately, but because they don't like one another, because they're too different, right? And what Carol Gilligan noticed was that when it came to boys playing anything and one of the boys cheating, then the game would have to stop. And the other kids would demand that the cheater would give them the advantage that he had taken. This meaning, for example, if they were playing football and one of them was using his hands, right, then you have an extra advantage, so you need to pay for it. And you're going to pay us by letting us have a penalty. And as soon as the other team had its penalty, the game continued. But when it came to girls and one of them cheated, the game would stop as well, but then the problem would be different because it wouldn't be a problem of what did you take that you didn't give me the opportunity to have, right? Why isn't this fair? And it was more about, but you're my friend. How could you betray me like this, right? You are not supposed to treat me like this because we are friends. We're supposed to be important to one another. So you couldn't have done this, right? And not only did the game stop, it ended, but the friendship would end as well, because I cannot call you my friend if you betray me the way you just did. And that speaks of how do we relate to the other person. Okay? For women, the bonding, the attachment to the other person is what's fundamental. So important that rules are not as important as how do you treat the other person? How does the the other person treats you. And if that means that you love, or that you love and care for the person, or you don't, which obeys to the fact that women are going to establish their relationship with the baby, right? They're going to develop the spiritual part of the baby. And that means making them understand who they are and how they relate to others. Okay? So that is why for women, relationships are so important, and the bonds between people are so important. That also makes women a very good image of God's mercy, because mercy is forgetting about justice or the rule for a second, because the other person is that important, which is actually what happened when Jesus died on the cross, right? When he died on the cross, we were sinners, and if he had stuck to charging us with every little sin that we had committed, then he would have lost us, because we would deserve death, right? So he would have to live without us. And he cared so much for us that he decided to punish himself and take all the sin so that he wouldn't lose us, right? And that is the kind of image that women become, the image of mercy. And in the case of men, why are men so centered upon rules? Because let's remember that men are going to be providers, right? They provide the food, the shelter. They also provide protection. And to do that, what they need is to understand the rules of nature and follow them so that they can have the best chances ever. They need to understand that kind of thing. So of course, it's fundamental for men to always play within the rules, right? To always have those rules very, very clearly. And this is how men become the image of divine justice. Because indeed, because God is never unfair, right? He does care for justice. And caring for justice is in a way caring for the other person, because it means that you are going to make sure that the other person has as much as you do, right? And it's a very good way of relating to this other person. But to do that, you need to give the rule far more importance than you give to their relationship or the bonding. And this is how men become a very good image of what divine justice looks like. So yeah, right now, because of feminism and our individualism, that is supposed to be the best way of being human in these modern ages. So as I had already told you, motherhood is going to be the fulfillment of femininity, because everything that makes women feminine is about being able to take care of children the way that women take care of children. And fatherhood is the fulfillment of masculinity, because everything that makes men masculine is what's going to help them take care of children how they take care of children. It is always about being a gift for the other person and developing one's own humanity by helping those other people develop their own. And this is what we do when we raise children. So yes, there is an essential difference between femininity and masculinity, and the difference doesn't mean that one sex is superior to the other. Actually, the real way of guaranteeing that both sexes have the same dignity and the same rights is by guaranteeing that we value each of the sexes is as important as the other. So anyway, this is today's topic. If you have any question or any comment, please write it in the comment section below. I'll try to answer it as soon as possible. And well, that's it. See you in a week. Have a nice day. Lots of blessings for everybody. Bye.